I on? I'm not on. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for coming out this evening. I really appreciate it. I know everybody's lives are really busy this time of year, so we appreciate your time. This evening, we have Mr. Colin Ferriman. He is a registered professional archaeologist. He has been working as a consultant archaeologist for over 25 years. Through his experience, he has traveled all throughout the country from New Hampshire to Washington State, conducting archaeological research and surveys. His home base is in Sheridan, Wyoming, where he lives with his wife, Heidi, and their son, Bridger, and lots of pets. He directs Cultural Resource Analysts, Inc., Rocky Mountain's office. And in his time off, Colin is very active with the Sheridan area search and rescue as he enjoys traveling and seeing the world. And so we want to thank him for coming this evening. Thank you, sir.
Cool. Thank you.
Look forward to
I
hearing
think this thing's going to turn on. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I need. Is it on? Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. Let's see if I can. So, my name's Colin. I'm an archaeologist, and I work out of Sheridan. But I think I heard one of you guys say Wyoming's just like one big town with really long streets. So, I like being in Gillette. I work in Gillette quite a bit. I was just out on the Wyodak mine doing some surveys, so that's always fun. So before I start, I'd like to thank the Rockpile Museum. These county museums are just a real gem in Wyoming. They have a weighty responsibility of preserving the past in the present for the future. So good job, guys. I think it's really cool that this museum's doing so well. I'd like to see one in Sheridan do as well, but it's not. So you guys are, this is a gem, so enjoy it. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Robert, for inviting me. I'd also like to thank my company, Cultural Resource Analysts, because they paid me to come here. So I grew up in Colorado, and my folks would take vacations up into Wyoming. And I clearly remember when I was a little guy visiting a segment of the Oregon Trail near South Pass. I could see the braid climbing up the hill, and I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. And then along came the video game, and boy, I was hooked. I remember watching the old Western wagon trail movies with my father, and I wish I was able to experience what they were showing in those movies. But upon reflection, sometimes I don't think they were completely honest with how hard life on the Oregon Trail was. I mean, upon reflection, as I was driving down here, doing 80 miles per hour between the 100-mile drive, I was like, good golly, the internal combustion engine is an awesome thing. The Oregon Trail is the nation's largest and longest archaeological site. Today, it's the remains of a series of interrelated features, including ruts, graves, forts, towns, and artifact scatters that extend from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City, Oregon. In Wyoming, the trail traverses from Fort Laramie on the east to Cokeville on the west. What we know of the Oregon Trail today is actually a collective route of overlapping trails that largely adhere to the same corridor, including the Overland, the Mormon Pioneer, the Pony Express, and the Oregon Trail, that collectively represent a prolonged and intensive immigration event that occurred in our nation from 1841 to 1889. This was a period in our nation when our nation was young, and endeavoring pioneers ventured west for a variety of reasons, including to obtain cheap or free land, to get rich in the vast gold fields of California, to escape religious persecution, to avoid the American Civil War, or to just have an adventure. The Oregon Trail collectively was the principal travel corridor for the great 19th century westward expansion. The trail has its roots in Native American pathways and early fur trappers and trader routes. Eventually, the trail would become the primary route across the Great Plains and into the West. Initially and throughout its service life, the trail was associated with Western expansion and settlement. Early on in the trail's history, it was utilized by Mormon pioneers beginning in 1847, who migrated to the Salt Lake Valley. In 1849, the trail traffic picked up significantly when gold was discovered in California. And the trail traffic peaked with the hectic year-and-a-half operations of the Pony Express that occurred between 1860 and 1861. Along with numerous European American immigrants, the trail also brought with it the demise of traditional Native American lifeways. Through military domination and reservation system, military forts were established along the trail corridor, not only to protect the westward traveling immigrants, but to also apply pressure and subjugate and control the regional Native American groups. Beginning in 1843, hundreds of thousands of families, primarily from the Midwest and Mid-South, traveled on the Oregon Trail to stake claims on land for laws like the Oregon Donation Land Act. This spurred a land rush that allowed people of limited means and both free and enslaved African Americans to claim land to homestead. Beginning in 1847, approximately 70 to 80,000 pioneers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, led by Brigham Young, went off to find their homeland based in present-day Utah. They endured this trip in order to practice a religion and to promote the establishment of Mormon communities. They traveled by wagon train and by handcart, and the journey was difficult and many faced severe hardships. The California Gold Rush spurred an intense period of migration. The rush is traced back to James Marshall, who on January 24th, 1848, found gold at Sutter's Mill. And over the next 7 years, over 30,000 people would travel on the Oregon Trail and Overland trails to seek their fortunes. And then my favorite, the Pony Express, was a mail relay system that was operated through horseback. At the time, it was the fastest mail service in the country. It took about 10 days for a letter from Missouri to reach California via the 1,900-mile route. Horses and riders would ride at breakneck speeds between Pony Express stations that were located about 25 miles apart. The service only lasted about 18 months and was terminated when the first transcontinental telegraph was completed, which provided a faster electronic communication. In total, about 400,000 people traveled along the trail. This was the largest voluntary mass migration in U.S. history. It's estimated that the wagon trains traveled about 12 to 15 miles per day, between 4 and 6 months, traveled 12 to 15 miles per day every day for about 4 to 6 months, depending on their destination. The goal was to cover the distance between April and September, thus missing winter. Life on the trail was marked by days of boredom and drudgery, punctuated by startling events. The trail was dirty, dusty, and there were few opportunities to clean, and this led to health and sanitation issues. Prior to setting out, packing was critical for a family to sustain the months-long journey. Wagons were generally limited to a 2,000-pound weight limit, and therefore travelers would have to pack large quantities of non-perishable food like flour, bacon, coffee, dried beans, dried fruit, hardtack, weapons, cooking utensils, bedding, and clothing. Beyond draft animals, milk cows and chickens were considered luxuries and would provide fresh food along the trail. Light instruments, books, heirlooms, and other treasured items were also taken, but oftentimes the heavier things were discarded along the trail. I have found piano keys along the Oregon Trail before. Somebody tried to haul a piano. I don't know why, but somebody did. Oxen were the preferred draft animals, as they were strong and durable and relatively cheap. They could survive on limited grass and water. And mules were the second choice draft animals. They were generally faster but less durable and could be stubborn. Horses were also used, but they were the fastest, but they were prone to injury and disease. Life on the Oregon Trail was arduous. Many challenges were met, ranging from severe weather, river crossings, bandits, Native American raids, but by far, disease was the biggest killer. And among diseases, cholera was queen. Cholera is a highly contagious disease, and it can kill a healthy person in a single day. Other killers were dysentery, typhoid, measles, and diphtheria. All of these diseases were made worse by the consistent exhaustion, hunger, poor sanitation, and dehydration. Accidents were also a primary killer. Wagons were frequently overloaded, which caused them to collapse or cause rollovers. Children in particular were frequently ran over. In fact, the first recorded death on the Oregon Trail was little Joel Hembree, who was ran over by a wagon at the age of 9. It's estimated that between 6 and 10% of the immigrants on the trail died. This equates to about 20 to 30,000 people. Therefore, in addition to the nation's largest archaeological site, the Oregon Trail is also the nation's largest graveyard. There are approximately 20 to 30 graves per mile along the trail. Most of the graves are unmarked, as time was an essence and burial parties lacked resources. It is also thought that marked graves would attract scavengers and grave robbers. Frequently, people were buried right in the middle of the trail so that the wagon traffic would just tamp down the grave, hiding it from view. So when you're on the Oregon Trail, take off your hat because there's a lot of people below you. The Oregon Trail is well documented. In fact, preserving segments and other features on the Oregon Trail were some of our nation's earliest efforts in historic preservation. So to me, there are two interesting aspects to modern day documentation of the Oregon Trail. First, it's recording the trail itself. It is well documented, but there are numerous segments and braids that have not been recorded. And sometimes the trail is readily identified by ruts within a swale. For example, swales entering and exiting Fort Laramie are truly impressive. I first did not recognize the cuts in the landscape because I thought they were too big and too deep to be anything man-made. But then when we plotted them on the map and we saw that they're leading to and from Fort Laramie, it became very evident that this was a location where thousands upon thousands of wagons converged and left from a single location. These ruts are literally, they look like hillsides. You don't realize that there's thousands upon thousands just blasting through there. Other famous locations along the trail include the deep ruts carved in the bedrock near Guernsey, Wyoming, or the somewhat defined ruts on Windlass Hill in Nebraska. And then there are newly identified segments that I found this year near Guernsey. Then at times, surface evidence of the trail has been destroyed, which is the case for many segments in Nebraska where agriculture activities have long destroyed the trail. However, if you're lucky enough and you're digging in the right spot, sometimes you can find buried evidence of the trail, like these amethyst glass sherds that we found in a Nebraska farm field right along a trail segment. The second aspect I find interesting about the Oregon Trail is the historic documentation efforts conducted by early preservationists. Early efforts to map the trail were undertaken by the General Land Office, which is the precursor to the Bureau of Land Management. This was followed by the organized effort to identify and preserve Oregon Trail, which was undertaken in 1906 by a guy named Ezra Meeker, who retraced the trail and placed markers. Cumulatively, the historic efforts led to public interest in the trail, and Congress officially designated the Oregon Trail as a national trail in 1978. More recently is the formation of the Oregon California Trail Association, or OCTA. This organization has a large and active volunteer membership. They frequently work with private landowners and government land administrators to identify, place markers, and preserve segments of the historic trail. This is just one example of many preservation societies at the local, state, and national level dedicated to preserving our nation's trails. And here are some of the early and modern day markers, signs, and statues dedicated to the Oregon Trail. When I'm working near the Oregon Trail, or really any historic trail in Wyoming, I always conduct due diligence research. For example, while working near Fort Laramie, I noted a feature on the 1884 GLO plat map that said Weber's Saloon, located just outside of the fort. So I was curious to see if we would find any evidence of this establishment. Fortunately, we had access to private land, and sure enough, just downslope from the map location of the saloon, we discovered a dump of very early bottles and cans. These were some of the earliest historic artifacts I've encountered in Wyoming. So I kind of like imagining the travelers heading towards Fort Laramie and seeing old Weber's on the hill. Likely, it was an informal building or maybe a repurposed wagon near the edge of the trail, but it would have been really nice to have like a glass of whiskey or a beer, which would have been a much appreciated luxury. I'm sure it was expensive. Another one of my favorite features on the trail that I recorded was this stone. I found that in Wyoming, and it says, "I was here," and somebody else below it wrote, "Me too." And I've often wondered, who are these two guys or gals, and why did they spend the time to carve the stone? but it was sitting right in the middle of the trail. So I'm pretty sure it's part of the Oregon Trail. Of course, there are other trails in Wyoming. Many of them are spurs of the Oregon Trail. For example, there's the Bozeman Trail and the Jim Bridger Trail, and then there's the Thornburg Road and a few others. The Bozeman Trail and the Jim Bridger Trail were related to traffic of immigrants going up to the Montana goldfields. The Bozeman Trail is the older of the two trails. It was originally established by John Bozeman in 1863, and it was used as an immigrant trail from 1864 till 1868. And then it continued as a military route after that. This trail was controversial because it crossed the hunting grounds and sacred lands of several Native American tribes, which led to conflict. The trail stems from the Oregon Trail Deer Creek Station near modern-day Glen Rock and headed north. This trail was rerouted a couple of times until 1865, when the formal route was established closer to Casper. As conflict increased, the military established new forts such as Fort Phil Kearny along this trail. By 1866, immigrant travel on the Bozeman Trail largely ended, and the trail was only used primarily as a military route for campaigns against the Northern Plains tribes. Use of the trail ended almost entirely with the signing of the Fort Laramie Treaty in 1868, which required all military posts along the Bozeman Trail to be abandoned. Then this trail was later utilized again in the 1870s for those who were seeking gold in the Montana and Dakota Badlands. That guy, J.R. Gallegos, was a scout for the cavalry. That was kind of cool to find his name along the trail. Mountain man, trapper, and general all-around adventurer Jim Bridger recognized a need for a new trail to the Montana goldfields that did not traverse the sacred hunting grounds of the Northern Plains tribes. The Bridger Trail was a short-lived route that was used between 1864 and 1868. It provided a safer passage to the Montana goldfields. And this route was originally permitted by local Native Americans, but as regional conflicts increased, the trail was abandoned. So whereas the Oregon Trail is well documented, there are numerous features and segments and components that have been components of significant spur trails that have not been documented. This is the Thornburg Wagon Trail. This is a spur of the Oregon Trail that stems from Fort Bridger towards Fort Thornburg, which was located on eastern Utah's Ashley Valley. A few years ago, my company was contracted to piece together this trail and to figure out what remains of it, if anything. This involved extensive research and the poring over of historic maps and documents and diaries. The historical roots of the Thornburg Trail are intrinsically tied to the Meeker Massacre, and before that, Custer's Last Stand. In reaction to these events, local governments throughout the West implemented draconian decrees. These drastic and ill-conceived policies directed at Native Americans only made things worse. Another key event that was tied to this trail is the Sand Creek Massacre, which resulted in surviving Native Americans having a profound distrust of the U.S. military and the federal government. So this was a period of just extreme distrust and fear on both sides. Nathan Meeker was one of those government officials that initiated draconian measures specifically targeted against the White River Ute Native American tribe. Meeker was an agent to the White River Ute, and he believed he could force the Utes into taking up agricultural lifestyle, which was contrary to their hunting and gathering lifestyle that they have been sustaining the Utes up for eons up until that point. But Meeker was stubborn, and he went as far as plowing under some of the reservation land, including the horse racing track that they loved, against the will of the White Mountain Utes. This exasperated the conflict, and one of the Native American liaisons publicly beat Meeker in the streets of Denver as a way of expressing his displeasure. In response to his beating, Meeker requested federal troops to be sent to the reservation to provide a check against the agitators. Major Thomas Thornburg and a column of 200 soldiers were dispatched from Fort Steele near present-day Rollins. Once inside the White River Reservation, the column was ambushed by over 700 Ute warriors, and the fight was known as the Battle of Milk Creek. During this fight, Thornburg and about 16 of his men were killed, and 28 were injured. And most of the service animals were either stolen or killed, which led the survivors to be stranded until a relief column of Buffalo soldiers from Fort Lewis in southern Colorado were able to rescue them. The next day after the battle, Meeker's Indian Agency was attacked, and this would be known as the Meeker Massacre. During this attack, Meeker was killed along with 10 members of his staff, and his wife and daughters were captured and held captive for 23 days. Following these events, the military acted swiftly and defiantly. They rounded up all of the White Mountain Utes and forced them onto a new reservation in eastern Utah's Ashley Valley. Order would be maintained on the reservation by garrison troops stationed in the newly built Fort Thornburg. So, going ahead, at this point in time on the Oregon Trail, traffic had slowed to a trickle, which affected local economies of the forts and towns along the trail. To the point that in the year of 1878, the military pulled out of Fort Bridger, which caused a collapse in the local economy. Based on the events surrounding Meeker, a local entrepreneur named Judge William Carter saw an opportunity to change his fortunes. He financed and constructed the Carter Road, also known as the Thornburg Trail, and an associated telegraph line. The purpose of the road was to provide a route for the wagon supply trains and communications between Fort Bridger and Fort Thornburg. The road followed and improved trails that had been roughly established in prior years. At the time of our survey, the route of the trail and its purpose was generally understood, but the location and the condition of the site was not. That's where I came in. As a part of a larger project, we were contracted to field verify the existence of the road and the telegraph line. Finding the telegraph line was pretty easy, considering the telegraph poles are still standing. Those are the little short ones running along the main transmission line. And they also came with glass insulators and crossbars and wires, so it was pretty easy to find that. Finding the trail was a little more difficult. This involved historic research and reviewing historic maps from which we were able to establish a corridor to look in. And once we had a corridor, we started hiking. Oftentimes, when you're on the Oregon Trail, it can be difficult and kind of nebulous to know if you're actually on the trail or on a spur trail. So having ruts or swales being obscured by vegetation or modern developments. So it's really nice to find period artifacts like the amethyst glass or horseshoes. And if you're really, really lucky, sometimes you can find a buried wagon, like what we did. And so we found that buried wagon, and at that point I can say, yeah, we had found the Thornburg Wagon Trail. The construction of the first transcontinental railroad in 1869 promulgated the end of the nation's migration via wagons. For a few years, the trail and the spurs were utilized by local traffic, but in time, as technology advanced, these routes were abandoned completely or repurposed into modern-day roads. So, that's where we are now. And do you guys have any questions about my work on the Oregon Trail or anything? Yeah.
Whoever surveyed the land must knew what they were doing, because if you look at modern times, the interstate goes the same way as Oregon Trail.
Frequently, yeah, for sure.
All the railroads go the same way.
Yep.
And so it must have been, I guess they probably found the easiest way, and it's kind of crazy that modern days follow the same trail.
It is. I mean, a lot of it has to do with water, of course. I mean, yeah, I mean, the Platte River was a major thoroughfare for the Oregon Trail, especially through Wyoming. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is, there was some thought put into it. Yeah. Fort Reno, I have not, but I know what you're talking about. I have done work by Fort Steele up in Rollins. There's another spur off of the Fort Steele called the Fetterman Trail. We surveyed a lot of that. That was a military route. That's actually how Thornburg got down to Beaker area. But no, I have not worked up there. Yes. I have heard about it, but I can't say I know much about it. Is it on private land?
No, it's on, it's near Caballo Creek.
Caballo
As far as
Creek.
what I've looked at it in my amateur. But it should be right off where you pass Caballo Creek goes to Douglas. But it's a shame that nobody marked it because it's kind of a significant,
Sure.
battle that we have, the only battle in Campbell County.
I would encourage.
Is somebody already doing that?
Yeah, we sat in on the meeting they had here about Bone Pile Creek and the Sawyer expedition. And we went out and toured the site at the ranch, Pine Ranch. Pardon?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, they had a regular meeting here on it. We all drove out to the site.
So
This summer, we've been doing a little exploration around these battle sites, like the Overland and Hill Kearney and Sheridan and Hayfield, a bunch of different ones.
did you go to the wagon box?
Spurred my interest a little bit more. Watched the show on PBS, and the state archaeological headquarters in Cheyenne. There was a person there that actually could get ground signs made up for document the tourists like me to come up with the sign. So this happened at this location. So that kind of inspired me to see about having a sign made for our site too. I didn't even know that here. I lived in the West for 25 years. Didn't even know that the Bone Pile and the Caballo Creek and the Sawyer's expedition went through this area.
I only found out that I was very frustrated.
Yeah, it was a real surprise to me. So,
There's no other way.
Yeah, the Sawyer's expedition isn't neat.
But there isn't very much information about Bone Pile Creek anywhere.
Well,
So we need to get some out there.
you guys have a fantastic WASP group. I would encourage you guys to team up with like a firm such as mine or another firm and go out and survey it. And then, I mean, my company worked with the Sheridan Land Trust and we surveyed all their lands and we do it for free. And if you have an interest like that, if you can get it organized, we could help out. You're working with the state too?
we're working with the state to get a sign made and a location out at
Cool.
Caballo Creek, like the state ground.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of red tape to get all the stuff through, make sure all your different
One of the things you're
like 1 mile east of where Highway 59 crosses the Bio Creek, 1 mile east. That's an approximation. You won't tell me.
Yeah. I knew it wasn't on the road. I just knew it was like.
And then 12 miles west of there on Lone Pile Creek is where the actual Lone Pile battle is at. That's where most of the skirmish happened with the Indians. And that's on off of Highway 50, and 2 miles off of Highway 50 heading south.
sure.
About 10 miles south of town.
Okay. Yes, sir. I'll get you.
That are marked.
We're working on it.
Where's your display of artifacts from the profile?
Yep, in the front room.
Yeah, you can see some stuff that was, the boat, or the Caballo battlefield is just right off the road, it used to be on the Sunrise Line. They stood in the rifle pits that they dug in that were still there, they've been mined through. The bone pile site is in John and Ellen Mankin's backyard. John and Ellen's gal. The site is still there, and the rifle pits are still in the ground where they circled the wagons and they set the rifle pits. And Starter South did a whole bunch of certain, you said it was somebody else.
So they actually had cannons out there.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
very curious.
And then the, bone file site, Charlie Scott did a whole bunch of stuff up there. I can't remember if all of his notes years, they're in the public library. It's right up there.
Cool. Yeah, no, I can't say I've heard of it, but it does sound interesting. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Oh, very much so. Yep. Oh, were you really? Fantastic. Cool. Those segments we found out near Guernsey, we brought the Octa Club out. And goes just right through Hartville, and there's just tons and tons of braids out there. So it's a really neat area for the Oregon Trail. What does it do? Oh, I have not.
Very amazing. I actually just found some when I was rock climbing Pathfinder Underbar. I'll take a picture and look down at the full blast. Anyway, I learned a bunch more about it and then got more curious. I brought down and shined my UV fluorescent on it, and sure enough, it glows bright green.
I'm gonna have to try that. Okay. Yeah, it's the manganese. I mean,
So cool.
it dates from 1880 to World War One. It's a pretty tight frame.
I knew I had found full blast because I had, first of all, purple, then it had a rainbow sheen. But then I started, because that's what I do, just get curious, looking up more stuff, and I'm like, oh my god.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it went out of existence because Germany had the largest supplies of manganese in World War One. We didn't want to support Germany, so we started tempering our glass with selenium, and that's what we have now, a selenium glass that doesn't change color. Yes. That's a good question. I'll have to get back to you. I'm going to have to dig up those names. So there's a woman who is Northern Cheyenne, and she has been writing a really cool series of historic fiction about basically every major Native American event. I mean, I just got done reading her Meeker Massacre one. It was really good. I'll look it up for you. I can't quite remember the name, but there is a great series, and she's a fun author. She's put out 3 of them. She did Custer's Last Stand. She did the Pawnee breakout out of the prison in Oklahoma, and then she did Meeker's Massacre in her historical fiction series.
One more thing. I heard that you like the Pony Express. Have you seen the Pony Express rewrite?
I have seen, yes, reenactments of it. Yes, it is.
You got to catch it in Costco.
Those guys are crazy.
I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, they were nuts, running breakneck speeds across drainages and jumping. And
I think the Pony Express rewrite is pretty cool though. You
Yeah.
can track them all. It's really cool.
cool. Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah. Couldn't have been that good of a talk. They leave you all in the dark.
You ever been involved with, like the Dallas Red Buttes and,
I helped survey the Red Butte site back in 2021 when they set it aside because the BLM just set it aside as a recreational area, and I helped survey that. So yes, I did that one, and I did quite a bit of. There's just outside of Casper, going through the Red Butte area, is the Bozeman Trail, and it's really neat. Once you get off of the Bozeman Trail, just like a mile, you start getting up into those bluffs, and lots of Native American fortifications are up there where people would pot shot at the travelers and then run back into the Badlands of Casper and hide out. But you can find just some really cool little rifle pits and little hidey holes and stuff up there that the Native Americans were using to attack the Bozeman Trail. So they really didn't like it. It's a neat area. Yeah, Red Butte in itself is I mean, have you been to it? I mean,
yeah, my brother-in-law.
oh, okay. Sure.
Stomped around down there.
Okay. Yeah, that's neat.
located the exact location of the red heat?
I think they did do a pretty intensive metal detecting survey, and I think they found where they think they found it. Yes, I think they did. Yeah.
Danny Walker was
Yeah, Danny Walker. Yeah, I know Danny. Yeah.
put a paper together on that find.
I can tell you the parts I looked at, we didn't find it. We did find some neat prehistoric stuff, but nothing historic. There's a lot of things going on with stone circles and drive lines up there as well that predate all that.
So, like, where the Bozeman Trail goes through the little corner of Campbell County down southwest of here, can you see that?
Oh, sure. Bozeman Trails, it is very recognizable. I mean, it was heavily trafficked with very heavy wagons full of gold mining stuff. So it left some pretty deep ruts. I mean, I'm sure you guys know Ross Road. The Bozeman Trail parallels Ross Road pretty much extensively right through Johnson County. And if you just take 2 feet off of Ross Road, you see these great big deep ruts. That's the Bozeman Trail. It's clear as day. You can see it on Google Earth really well. I mean, if you wanted to fly around on Google Earth along Ross Road, you could see the Bozeman Trail. Anything else? Anything else? I like it. I thought it was fun. I like the Oregon Trail. Yes, my pleasure. Thank you, guys.